This is the Austrian flag, but did you know that in the past another flag was also associated with Austria? Well, in this video, let's find out the history behind these two flags and why the change occurred. Now for this, we have to look back at the history of Austria, and interestingly enough, that modern Austrian flag is one of the oldest flags that is still in use today by a country, and it can be dated back to at least 1230, when we find these colours on a coat of arms of the Babenberg family. It's today called the Flagge Österreichs, but it can be dated back all the way into the early 13th century with this Babenberg dynasty. There we find it on a coat of arms where we have a red, white, red triband being shown here. And this is the earliest depiction of it. Even though this is a 19th century copy, this is itself a seal that dates back to the early 13th century, and we can see there on the coat of arms of Frederick II of the House of Babenberg, who ruled in parts of what are today Austria, that we have this design present. Now this dates back to 1230, but just 16 years later that Babenberg house would become extinct as he was killed at the Battle of Leitha River. Now after the battle, this design, this coat of arms, was taken up by another house, by King Ottokar of Bohemia, although he himself would also meet a sticky end in 1278 at the Battle of Marchfeld. But just as had happened before, the banner was taken up, the coat of arms was taken over or assumed by the House of Habsburg following this decisive battle. The Habsburgs also owning lands in what is today Austria, as well as many other parts of Europe. The Habsburgs, of course, were an incredibly powerful family, the heirs to the Holy Roman Empire and the throne, the imperial throne, and so they added these colours to their expanding list of arms that they had. There was in fact a legend about where these colours came from, and that is that it dated back to 1260 and Leopold V, who had himself been given this banner as a kind of blood-spattered banner at the Battle of Acre, or the Siege of Acre, in the Holy Land in the Crusades. But as we've already seen, we actually have evidence that this is at least 30 years older than this legend, although this legend clearly sprang up later on. What's interesting is that the Holy Roman Empire's war flag or war banner continued to be this white cross on a red background that we've seen in various places throughout the Middle Ages, including on the flag of Denmark, on the Dambro, which is very similar to this. So what then about the yellow and black flag that we have also seen in association with Austria? Well, this is also very much linked to the Habsburgs as well, and it goes back to at least the middle of the 15th century. Now, the original Habsburg imperial banner, so the banner of the emperor himself, was a black eagle with two heads on a golden background, as we can see here, and this is the famous symbol that is associated with the Habsburg rulers. However, in terms of flags, this is quite a complex design to be having to print out on flags, and so it became easier to simply have the two colours of black and yellow on the flag to represent it instead. And actually in 1806, when the Holy Roman Empire was officially dissolved, and instead you got the creation of the Kingdom of Austria and Hungary together, it became necessary to have a flag to demarcate the territory of Austria within that. And that's where we see the black and yellow being used, as it was the same Joseph who had been Holy Roman Emperor who continued to rule as the monarch in Austria as well as the king in Hungary. And so we get the yellow and the black being used for Austria specifically, while the older red, white and red flags of various kinds were still being used for other parts of the empire. Particularly the Austro-Hungarian Navy had its own banner that it flew at sea, and this was the same red, white and red triband flag with a coat of arms and a crown on top of it in the centre. Now, of course, the First World War would start in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, specifically in Sarajevo in Bosnia. They would fight throughout the war on the side of the Central Powers, and eventually they would lose and the Austro-Hungarian Empire would be carved up and partitioned. This would create once again a separate Austria that was no longer together with Hungary. And initially in 1918, this state was called German Austria. Those Austrians inside this this political entity wanting to merge together with Germany, the other large German-speaking state in Europe, but this was denied them by the victorious Allies. And so this state also had to choose its own flag, and they went back to the red, white and red flag to distance itself somewhat from the previous government with the black and the yellow flag. But of course, this was also a very old set of colours that was associated with Austria and had been since the Middle Ages. And indeed, even though that German-Austrian state only lasted 1 year, and following that it had to change its name to the First Austrian Republic, which is still the state of Austria that we know today, this has remained as the Austrian flag ever since. There is also a state flag or a war flag, which we can see, which has an eagle there, no longer the double-headed eagle, of course, but an Austrian eagle holding a hammer and a sickle, which is slightly sus, I suppose, as well as the original Babenberg coat of arms that we see there. But these are now the flags most associated with Austria today. So thank you very much for watching this video about the Austrian flags and their history, and the history behind the symbolism that we have there. Thank you very much for watching this video. Check out some of the other videos that I have, links in the description and on the side there. I've made a lot of different videos about different flags that we have in Europe and some of the older flags that have come and gone in history as well. Are there any ones that I haven't yet covered that you would like to see me cover in the future? Then please do leave that behind in a comment, and I'll be sure to check those out and check out any of the discussions that are going on. I always like to read the comments and to see what new information people are bringing there, and learning a little bit myself as well. It's always a lot of fun to do, and I always enjoy learning something new. Until then, I have been Hilbert, and this has been The History.